Enemy pie. What can you do about a kid you don't like? Here's a tasty idea. By Derek Munson, art by Tara Callahan King. So before we start reading, let's preview our cover. Look at our illustration. We have the title Enemy Pie. We have a little boy. He's holding a pie. The pie doesn't look very tasty, and it has a little tag sticker coming out and it says for my best enemy. Let's go ahead and start. It should have been a perfect summer. My dad helped me build a treehouse. My sister was at camp, and I was on the best baseball team in town. It should have been a perfect summer, but it wasn't. It was all good until Jeremy Ross moved into the neighborhood. I didn't like Jeremy. He laughed when he struck me out. He had a party on his trampoline, and I wasn't invited. Jeremy Ross was the only person on my enemy list. I never even had an enemy list before, but he came along and I needed one. I hung it up in my treehouse where Jeremy Ross was not allowed. So let's stop and think. So we already have a couple of characters. First, we have our narrator. This little boy, our main character, is the person who is speaking in the story, who's telling us the story. We don't have a name yet, but he is not getting along with this Jeremy guy. So Jeremy's another character, and he's the boy that our narrator does not like because it says right here that he laughed at him when he struck out in baseball and he had a party and he didn't invite him. So he's not very happy with him. So that's why he has an enemy list. Dad understood stuff like enemies. He told me that when he was my age, he had enemies too, but he knew a way to get rid of them. He pulled an old recipe book off the kitchen shelf. Inside was a scrap of paper with faded writing. Dad squinted at it. Enemy pie, he said, satisfied. Now, anytime you see these bold letters, those are new words, new vocab words that the author is introducing to us. So he's always going to have a little definition on the bottom. So anytime you have bold words, you come and look at the highlight and you will have the definition. So let's pause and think. Why doesn't the narrator like Jeremy? Well, if we look at our text evidence, it says right here. He laughed. He didn't like him because he laughed when he struck him out, and he had a party on a trampoline, and he wasn't invited. So right now, he's on his enemy list because he was laughed at and wasn't invited to his party. What's in it? You may be wondering what exactly is an enemy pie. I was too, but Dad said the recipe was so secret he couldn't tell me. I begged him to tell me something, anything. I will tell you this, he said. Enemy pie is the fastest known way to get rid of enemies. This got my mind working. What kinds of things, disgusting things, would I put into my pie for an enemy? I brought Dad weeds, but he shook his head. I brought earthworms, but he didn't need those. I gave him the gum I've been chewing. He gave it right back. I went out to play alone. I listened to the sounds of my dad making enemy pie. I tried to imagine how horrible it must smell. Instead, I smelled something really, really good coming from our kitchen. I was confused. I went in to ask what was wrong. Enemy pie shouldn't smell this good. But Dad was smart. If enemy pie smelled bad, your enemy would never eat it, he said. He pulled the pie out of the oven. It looked good enough to eat, but still, I wasn't sure how enemy pie worked. What exactly did it do to enemies? Maybe it made their hair fall out. I asked Dad, but he wouldn't tell me. While the pie cooled, he filled me in on my job. There is one part of enemy pie that I can't do. You need to spend a day with your enemy. Even worse, you have to be nice to him. That's the only way enemy pie can work. Are you sure you want to go through with this? It sounded horrible. It was scary, but it was worth a try. I just had to spend one day with Jeremy Ross. Then he'd be out of my hair for the rest of my life. I knocked on his door. So it seems like he agreed with Dad, right? So let's pause and think. What job does the dad give the narrator? So what does Dad tell our narrator, our little boy, to do? Well, he said that in order for it to work, he needs to spend a day with him and be nice to him. So here's our text evidence. Even worse, you have to be nice to him. That's the only way enemy pie can work. So let's continue. No enemies allowed. When Jeremy opened the door, he seemed surprised. I was nervous. Can you play? I asked. He looked confused. I'll ask my mom, he said. He came back holding his shoes. We rode bikes and played on the trampoline. Jeremy's mom made us lunch. After lunch, we went to my house. It was strange. I was kind of having fun with my enemy, but I couldn't tell Dad that since he had worked so hard on the enemy pie. Jeremy knew how to throw a boomerang. He threw it and it came right back to him. I threw it and it went into my backyard. When we climbed over the fence to find it, the first thing Jeremy noticed was my treehouse. Can we go in it? He asked. I knew he was going to ask that, but he was the top person, the only person on my enemy list, and enemies aren't allowed in my treehouse. But he did teach me to throw a boomerang, and he did let me play on his trampoline. He wasn't being a very good enemy. That's funny. Okay, I said, but hold on. I climbed up first and tore the enemy list off the wall. We played games until my dad called us down for dinner. Dad made macaroni and cheese, my favorite. Jeremy's too. Maybe Jeremy Ross wasn't so bad after all. I was beginning to think that we should just forget about enemy pie. Ooh, so something's going on, something's changing. Pause and think. Why does the narrator tear down his enemy list? Yes. So it says right here, I climbed up first and tore the enemy list off the wall. Because it wouldn't be kind or nice if Jeremy saw his name up there. That's not being a good friend, right? And they're getting along right now. So I think he's having a change of heart. Losing a best enemy. But after dinner, Dad brought out the pie and cut it into slices. Dad, I said, it's sure nice having a new friend in the neighborhood. I was trying to tell him that Jeremy was no longer my enemy, but Dad only smiled and nodded. I think he thought I was just pretending. Wow, Jeremy said. My dad never makes pies like these. Suddenly, I panicked. I didn't want Jeremy to eat enemy pie. He was my friend. Jeremy, don't eat it. I think it's poisonous or something. Jeremy crumpled his eyebrows and looked at me funny. I felt relieved. I had saved his life. I was a hero. If it's so bad, Jeremy asked, why has your dad already eaten half of it? I looked at my dad. He was eating enemy pie. Good stuff, was all Dad said. I watched them eat enemy pie. Dad was laughing. Jeremy was happily eating, and neither of them was losing any hair. It seemed safe enough, so I took a tiny taste. Enemy pie was delicious. Afterward, Jeremy invited me to play on his trampoline in the morning. I still don't know how to make enemy pie. I still wonder if enemies hate it or if their hair falls out. But I don't know if I'll ever get an answer because I just lost my best enemy. Pause and think. What happens when Jeremy eats the enemy pie? So, does anything happen to Jeremy? Nothing. So, what was Dad's lesson here to our narrator? Yeah, all this was Dad's trick. He kind of tricked his son to spending time with his enemy. And once they spent time together, they realized that they're not so bad after all. They became really good friends. So all this was Dad's idea, and it actually worked out because the boys now get along. They're friends. So now what you're going to do after reading the story is you're going to go back to your Google Classroom assignment and you're going to answer your questions from your graphic organizer. The end.